What if I told you that the only thing standing between the life you have and the life you want is the identity you've been assuming, often without even knowing it? Every time you say, "I am," you're casting a spell. You're not just describing yourself, you're creating yourself, and if you've been unconsciously repeating the same identity, "I am tired," "I am broke," "I am not enough," then it's no wonder your outer world keeps recycling the same patterns. But what if, for just 21 nights, you chose something different? What if you dared to become someone new before anything around you changed? This is what Neville Goddard taught, that your reality doesn't shift because of your effort, your luck, or even your prayers. It shifts when you shift your assumption. Because the world you see is only ever a mirror of who you assume yourself to be. Right now, your life is an echo of the identity you've been repeating in silence. Think about it. How many times today did you affirm something unconsciously? "I'm stressed. I always do this. Nothing ever works out for me." You didn't say it with power, you didn't light a candle or chant, but your subconscious heard it, and it obeyed. Because that's the thing, the subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't debate with you, it simply accepts what you consistently feed it, and then it moves heaven and earth to prove you right. So if you want to change your world, don't chase the circumstances. Change the seed. Change the root. Change the... Neville said it clearly. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas, for you think from your ideas. So the question is, what are you thinking from? Who have you been assuming yourself to be? Because whether you know it or not, you've been living inside that assumption. If you believe you're always struggling, always being overlooked, always one step behind, your world has no choice but to reflect that belief. Not because the world is cruel, but because the world is obedient. It mirrors back to you the dominant conception you hold of yourself. So here's the secret Neville discovered. The identity you choose internally becomes the reality you walk into externally. And the bridge between those two worlds? Sleep. Yes, sleep. Because just before you fall asleep, your brain slips into a magical state, a threshold between the conscious and the subconscious, the place where your assumptions are most easily impressed. Neville called it the state akin to sleep, and it's here, in this in-between space, that your reality can be rewritten. You don't need rituals, you don't need permission, you don't even need proof. You just need to assume the identity of the one who already has the life you desire. And here's what's wild. When you do this night after night for just 21 nights, your world begins to shift. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've aligned with a new version of yourself, and the universe must respond. So how do you do this? You start by choosing a new identity, not a vague hope, not "I want to be happier." You choose something specific, something aligned with the life you deeply desire. I am financially free, I am deeply loved and seen, I am healed, whole, radiant. You don't beg for it, you don't wait to feel worthy of it, you assume it. Because that's the law of assumption. You become what you assume yourself to be, not after it's visible, but before. This isn't wishful thinking, it's spiritual causality, and it's how creation works. But there's one thing you must know. The old identity won't go quietly. It will whisper to you, remind you of your failures, pull you back into old patterns. And this is where most people give up. But not you. Because if you can hold the new identity, even when nothing has changed yet, even when your outer world is screaming the opposite, that's when the shift happens. That's when your subconscious gets the message. This is who we are now. Not who we hope to be. Not who we're trying to become. Who we are, right now. And the moment your subconscious accepts that, the world bends to match it. You rise to a higher level of being by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the image, not the idea, the feeling, that's the key. So when you lay in bed tonight, don't just say the words, feel them. Imagine what it would be like to wake up tomorrow as that new version of you. What would be different? How would you walk, speak, breathe? What would you no longer tolerate? How would people treat you? And more importantly, how would you treat yourself? Let your body feel it. Let your emotions rise and drift into sleep, carrying that new state, not as a dream, but as a reality already chosen. This is what rewires the subconscious. Not affirmations shouted in daylight, but assumptions planted in the quiet soil of night. And if you do this for 21 nights, fully, sincerely, and consistently, something powerful happens. You cross the identity threshold, and the old version of you no longer has a home to return to. Your thoughts change, your emotions change, your energy changes, and reality, it follows. Because it always has. You just didn't know how much power you had. Until now. When Moses stood before the burning bush, trembling, unsure and full of doubt, he asked, "Who shall I say sent me?" And the voice of the divine replied, "I am that I am." That wasn't just a name. It was a revelation, a spiritual code, a mirror. Because when you say I am, you're not just speaking, you're invoking the name of God within you. You are declaring creation. You're shaping the invisible clay of consciousness into something solid, something tangible. You're giving orders to the quantum fabric of your life. So let me ask you, what have you been saying after the words, I am? Have you unknowingly attached the name of the divine to pain, to limitation, to unworthiness? Because if you have, then it makes perfect sense why your life looks the way it does. Not because you're broken, but because you're powerful and no one ever taught you how your power really works. This is the spiritual source code, the secret most people never unlock, that reality doesn't come to you, it comes from you, from the core of who you believe yourself to be. Your self-concept is the blueprint that everything else follows. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. If you walk through life identifying as someone who's always behind, always lacking, always overlooked, guess what happens? You start noticing all the ways that story is true, not because it's the ultimate truth, but because you assumed it into being. Your identity sends out a frequency, and that frequency calls life to match it, again and again, until you change the signal. And the most haunting part, most of the assumptions you're operating from aren't even yours. They were handed to you by parents, by teachers, by a culture that said, this is who you are, this is what's possible, this is all you'll ever be. And you agreed, not consciously, but energetically. You internalized those stories and then your subconscious began treating them as law. This is where spiritual contracts are formed. Not on paper, but in identity. Like I am the one who's always left behind. I am the one who gets close to success then sabotages it. I am the one who people never truly choose. It's painful, but it feels familiar, and that's the trap. The subconscious doesn't seek what's best, it seeks what's known. And until you rewrite what's familiar, you'll keep walking in circles. You'll call it fate, but it's not fate. It's programming. It's identity inertia. Neville Goddard said, "Man moves in a world that is nothing more or less than his consciousness objectified," which means your world is the printout of your consciousness, and your consciousness is shaped by your I am. So when you shift your I am, you shift the printout. It starts internally, but eventually it has no choice but to become external. It has to become visible. That's how powerful assumption is. But let's go deeper. This isn't just spiritual poetry, it's neurological, it's biological. Your brain is designed to reinforce whatever you believe about yourself. Ever heard of the reticular activating system? It's a network of neurons in your brainstem that acts like a filter for information. It decides what gets noticed and what gets ignored. So if you believe I am not worthy, your RAS will filter your reality to confirm it. You'll overlook opportunities. You'll dismiss compliments. You'll downplay success. Not because you're unworthy, but because you've been instructed to see yourself that way. You told your mind, this is who I am, and your mind said, understood, I'll make sure everything we perceive matches that. And it does. You could be standing in front of someone who wants to love you completely, and you'll miss it. You'll find a reason to disqualify yourself, not because you want to, but because the identity running in the background says, this isn't safe, this isn't who we are. Can you see now why this runs deeper than positive thinking? You can try to change your life from the outside, new habits, new schedules, new people, but if your inner I am hasn't shifted, everything else eventually crumbles. Because the foundation didn't change, and identity is the foundation. It's the gatekeeper between who you are now and who you're meant to become. But here's the good news. Just as you once learned your limitations, you can now unlearn them. You can dissolve the old contracts. You can rewrite the code. But not by force, not by hustle, by presence, by assumption, by saying I am and meaning it, even before there's evidence. Because in spiritual truth, the evidence always comes after the assumption, not before. So the shift starts now. You can stop waiting for the world to change before you give yourself permission to feel different. You can choose a new name, a new story, a new state of being, and let that identity be your new point of origin. And when you fall asleep in that identity again and again, something awakens, the subconscious rewires, the filters adjust, the patterns collapse, and the mirror, which is your world, begins to show you something new, not because you earned it, but because you remembered who you are. I am that, I am. Absolutely. Here is the next 1,000 words, continuing into the third section, unconscious identity loops, how you got stuck. You weren't born believing you were limited. You didn't come into this world thinking you were broken, undeserving, or not good enough. Those were inherited beliefs, silently absorbed long before you knew how to question them. Between the ages of 0 and 7, your brain functions primarily in a state called theta. It's a brainwave frequency associated with deep hypnosis, imagination, and pure suggestibility. It's the realm of dreams and programming. In those early years, you weren't reasoning, you were absorbing. Every word spoken around you, every look of disapproval, every repeated phrase became part of your internal identity script. I am too much. I am not enough. I am invisible. I am responsible for everyone else's feelings. And you didn't just hear those messages, you felt them. And feeling is what seals the subconscious. So even now, decades later, you might still be reacting from that early script. Still trying to prove your worth, still shrinking to stay safe, still chasing validation that was withheld when you were small. But here's the cruel twist. You don't even realize it's happening. Because identity doesn't scream. It whispers. It hides in plain sight. It shows up in patterns. The same kind of relationship with a different face. The same struggle with money no matter how hard you work. The same inability to trust yourself fully. Different circumstances. Same core loop. This is the unconscious identity cycle. It's like a movie playing on loop in your subconscious, casting you in the same role again and again, until you realize you're the one who wrote the script. Maybe you've felt it. You try to level up, but something invisible pulls you back. You say you want abundance, but your bank account never reflects it. You say you want love, but you keep attracting the same unavailable energy. You say you want peace, but your nervous system is addicted to chaos. That's not coincidence. That's coding. It's not that you don't want change, it's that the version of you you're operating from doesn't believe it's safe to have it. And the subconscious always chooses safety over expansion. That's why trying harder doesn't work. Because effort cannot override identity. You can push, grind, hustle, but if the core belief is still, I am not the kind of person who succeeds, then all that energy gets filtered through that assumption. And it distorts everything. You sabotage the opportunity, you ignore the intuitive nudge, you misread the signal, not because you're weak, but because you're aligned with an old identity that doesn't match your desired future. You're still assuming yourself into a version of reality you no longer want. And the mind, brilliant as it is, can only follow the program you've installed. So trying to change your life without changing your self-concepts is like trying to run new software on an old operating system. Eventually it crashes. This is why you can read all the books, repeat all the affirmations, attend every seminar, and still feel stuck. Because you've been addressing the symptoms, not the source. The source is who you believe you are. And here's what's important to understand. You didn't choose those beliefs consciously. They were modeled to you, repeated to you, traumatized into you, and eventually they became familiar. And the subconscious doesn't care if familiar is painful. It cares if it's predictable. That's why some people feel more comfortable in dysfunction than in peace. Peace feels unfamiliar. Joy feels suspicious. Love feels dangerous. Because those feelings don't match the early template. So your nervous system stays loyal to what it knows, even if it's killing your spirit. This is why awareness is power, because once you see the loop, you can break it. You can stop blaming your circumstances and start questioning your assumptions. You can begin to notice the moment you default into, "I always do this," or "nothing ever works out," and pause. That pause is where the healing begins. It's where choice enters the conversation. Because before awareness there was only reaction, but now there's responsibility, not in a heavy, burdensome way, but in a liberating, soul-awakening way. You are not doomed to repeat the past, but you must become conscious of the identity that created it. Neville said, "Change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live." But to change your conception, you first have to see it. You have to catch the moment your identity whispers, "This isn't for people like us." The moment it says, "Don't get your hopes up." The moment it clings to fear instead of possibility, that's when you get to choose again, not by effort, but by assumption, by stepping into a new I am, not because it's already true, but because you've decided it will be. You don't need to fix the loop, you need to exit it. And you do that by claiming a new role, a new character in the theater of your life. You stop being the one who's always abandoned and become the one who is deeply chosen. You stop being the one who never has enough and become the one who lives in overflow. You stop being the one who struggles to be seen and become the one whose light cannot be ignored. This doesn't happen overnight, but it starts in an instant. The moment you decide, that old story is no longer mine. And then, night after night, you impress that new identity onto your subconscious. You plant it, you water it, you live from it. And the loop, it dissolves. Because you're no longer a match for it. You've become someone new, not by trying harder, but by assuming differently. There's a massive difference between wishing for something and assuming it. Wishing says, "I hope this happens someday." Assuming says, "This is already mine." Neville Goddard didn't teach you to beg for your desires. He didn't say to visualize and hope for the best. He said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not the possibility, not the distant future, the fulfillment, right now, because in the spiritual realm there is no someday, there is only state, there is only being. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest who you are. So the moment you become the person who already has the thing, the health, the love, the peace, the purpose, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to match that version of you. This is the law of assumption. And it's not complicated, but it requires one thing most people avoid: emotional courage. Because feeling the end while you are still standing in the opposite takes boldness, it takes surrender, it takes faith in the invisible. Anyone can say, "I want to be wealthy," but can you walk through your life as someone who knows they are already wealthy, even when your account is low? Can you feel the gratitude, the calm, the generosity of that version of you before the proof arrives? That's the key. That's what separates those who shift from those who wish. Because wishing waits, it watches the clock, it looks for signs, but assuming creates the signs. You don't wait for love to feel loved, you become love. You don't wait for opportunity to feel worthy, you step into worth, and then the opportunity shows up. This is what Neville meant when he said to live from the end, not live for the end. Living for the end says, one day, when it all works out, I'll finally feel safe, free, chosen. But living from the end says, I am safe now, I am free now, I am chosen now. Even if nothing around you says it's true yet, because assumption isn't a response to evidence, it's the cause of it. And feeling is the bridge. This is why Neville emphasized the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not the thought, not the image, but the emotional identity of the version of you who already has it. Because your emotions are energetic declarations, they're magnetic blueprints. If you feel like someone who's always struggling, even if you think about abundance all day long, your vibration is still anchored in lack. The universe doesn't listen to your words. It listens to your emotional state. It listens to your I am, not the one you say out loud, but the one you feel in your bones. So the practice is this: feel it before you see it. That's the game changer. That's the shortcut. And yes, it will feel strange at first, because your senses will argue with you. Your ego will say, be realistic. Your mind will whisper, you're just pretending. But here's the thing. All identity is pretend at first. You weren't born with your current self-concept. You rehearsed it. You repeated it. You believed it. So you can believe something new. You can pretend until it becomes real. That's not delusion. That's creation. Ask anyone who's transformed their life and they'll tell you, I had to believe it before I saw it. A woman who healed from a chronic illness said, every night I imagined myself dancing. I saw myself laughing, full of energy, free in my body. I felt the joy of being whole, even when I still needed help to get out of bed. And then, one day, my body caught up. A man who broke free from poverty said, I used to walk through the grocery store pretending I could buy anything I wanted. I held my head up like someone who never worried about money. At night, I felt the freedom of financial overflow. Within a year, my income tripled, and I was doing work I actually loved. Another person said, I was always the one who got passed over in love until one night I decided to become the one who is chosen. I didn't need anyone to prove it. I just lived in that state. I walked differently. I spoke differently. People noticed. Within weeks, everything shifted. That's the law of assumption in action. You feel it, you trust it, and the world conforms. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. And yes, you'll be tested, not by the universe, but by your own habits. You'll wake up and the old reality will tempt you. The voice will say, see, nothing's changed. That's your chance to return to the end, to declare again, I am already who I've chosen to be. That's how you break the pattern. That's how you override the default. You don't beg for transformation, you assume it. Start becoming internally unshakable. You sit in the chair of the version of you that already has the thing, and you don't get up, no matter what. Because that version of you, the one with the results, already exists, and the only thing separating you from them is assumption. So close your eyes, feel the end, breathe it in, walk in it, rest in it, live from it. Because once you do, the world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. There's a doorway you pass through every single night, and most people never realize how powerful it is. It's not in your house, it's in your mind. It's the space between wakefulness and sleep, the thin veil where your conscious mind softens and your subconscious begins to take the lead. Scientists call this the alpha-theta bridge, a brief window where your brainwave patterns slow down, slipping from the active, logical beta state into the deeply suggestible theta state. And in that space, your subconscious becomes wide open. This is the exact state Neville Goddard was talking about when he referred to the state akin to sleep. He understood what science would later prove, that in those final moments before you drift off, you have a golden opportunity to plant seeds in the soil of your being. Because at night, the gatekeeper steps aside, your critical mind, the one that says, this isn't possible, or that's not who I am, it begins to quiet. And that's when new assumptions can bypass the noise and go straight to the root. Neville said that if you can fall asleep while feeling the state of the wish fulfilled, not just thinking about it, but embodying it, then that feeling will be absorbed by your subconscious. And once it's absorbed, it starts to outpicture itself. Not instantly, but inevitably, because the subconscious is like rich, fertile soil. It doesn't care what kind of seed you drop, it will grow whatever you plant repeatedly and emotionally. So when you fall asleep in your fears, in your limitations, in your disappointments, you're not just ending the day. You're reinforcing the identity, you're watering the old self. But when you fall asleep in the feeling of already being loved, already being free, already being whole, even if nothing outside has changed, you begin to train your subconscious in a new frequency, and over time, that frequency becomes your new baseline. That's why night rituals matter more than most people think, because your final thoughts before sleep act like instructions to your subconscious. They're not forgotten, they're marinated in. So what are you telling your subconscious to believe? That you're lacking? That you're afraid? That you're behind? Or that you're becoming, embodying, remembering your true nature? Neville taught that the best time to impress the subconscious is when the body is still and the mind is drowsy, when your awareness can float freely, without resistance. And the key is to make that inner experience as real as possible, not with effort, but with surrender. You're not trying to force an outcome, you're simply dwelling in the new identity, feeling what it feels like to already be it. Not visualizing it like a movie on a screen, but entering the scene, stepping into the body of the one who already has the thing. What does it feel like to wake up next to the love you've longed for? What does your breath feel like when your body is healed? How does your chest expand when you know there's more than enough? What's the texture of that reality? Breathe it in and let it carry you into sleep. Because the moment your subconscious accepts it as truth, your world starts to bend. New thoughts emerge. New choices appear. New alignments are drawn in. Not because you're forcing them, but because you've become the person who already has them. And identity always gets expressed. So, for the next 21 nights, this is your practice. Not more effort, not more striving, but more becoming. Right before bed, when the veil is thin, shift your state. Turn off the noise. Close your eyes. And whisper internally, I am. Then fill in the rest, not with hope, but with certainty. I am whole. I am already there. I am the one I've been waiting for. Let that version of you tuck you in at night, and soon you'll wake up as them. So how do you actually do this? How do you reprogram your subconscious identity and begin manifesting from a new internal truth? It's not through wishing, it's not through willpower, it's through practice. A sacred, intentional process that impresses a new identity onto your subconscious night after night, until your reality has no choice but to follow. This is the 21-night identity practice, and if you commit to it fully, not casually but completely, it will shift your foundation from the inside out. Let's walk through it step by step. Step 1. Define your new identity. You can't become something new if you don't know what that new looks and feels like, so start here. Who is the version of you who already has the life you desire? Not vaguely, not happy or better. Get precise. What do they think about when they wake up? How do they speak about themselves? What do they no longer fear? What decisions do they make with ease? You need to feel this new identity as both believable and expansive. If it's too far out of reach, your subconscious will reject it. But if it's too small, it won't stretch you. You're aiming for a state that feels possible but powerful. Instead of saying, I am a millionaire, try, I am someone who always attracts overflow. I am a match for unexpected abundance. I am fully supported by life in every way. Don't force the future. Embody the state. This identity is not something you earn, it's something you decide. So choose. Step 2. Create precise I am declarations. Your words are spells. Every time you say, I am, you're invoking your creative authority, the divine power within you to declare what is. So write your identity into existence with declarations that are short, charged, and present tense. I am grounded. I am radiant. I am irresistible to divine opportunity. I am seen. I am safe. I am significant. Keep your statements clear and energetic. Avoid phrases like, I will be, or I'm trying to be. Those send your desire into the future, always out of reach. Instead, affirm the reality as if it already exists, because in truth, it already does. You're just aligning with it. Speak your declarations out loud. Whisper them. Feel them rise up from your belly. Say them until they don't just sound true, they feel true. Step 3. Visualize with feeling before bed. This is your golden window. As you lay in bed, eyes closed, breath steady, begin to enter the scene of the new you. Don't just see it, be in it. Step into the moment of the wish fulfilled. Imagine walking through your day as this version of you. Feel the ease, the calm, the joy. Let your heart expand in the fullness of this identity. What does your world look like when you live from this place? How do people respond to you? What do you say to yourself in the mirror? Let the movie play behind your eyes. And more importantly, let it move you emotionally. Because feeling is what the subconscious listens to. You can use scripting if that helps, writing in a journal as if it's already done. Or you can engage in inner conversations. Hear yourself saying, this feels so natural now. I love being this version of me. Imagine someone you trust affirming back to you, you've changed, you're glowing. Sink into that experience and drift into sleep holding it like a prayer. This is the secret Neville insisted on. Sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Because if the subconscious receives that state night after night, it must find a way to externalize it. Step 4. Morning reactivation. The trap of transformation is the morning. You wake up, and the old identity tries to reclaim you. You reach for your phone. You start reacting. You remember what hasn't changed. But this is where your new self must rise. Before your feet touch the ground, re-enter the state. Speak your I am statements aloud, or say them internally as you move through your routine. Look at yourself in the mirror and affirm, I am grounded, I am chosen, I am ready. Don't wait for evidence. Create it with your posture, your energy, your intention. Even 5 minutes of conscious activation in the morning can prevent you from slipping back into unconscious loops. It's not about being perfect, it's about staying loyal to the new you even when the old world still lingers. Step 5. Record your voice and listen before sleep. This step is often overlooked, but it's incredibly powerful. Record your I am statements, your visualizations, or even a scripted scene in your own voice. Why? Because your subconscious trusts your voice more than anyone else's. When you hear yourself affirming the new identity over and over, it bypasses resistance. You can layer in gentle music or sleep frequencies if that helps. Play this audio as you fall asleep. Let it become the soundtrack of your transformation. This allows your subconscious to absorb the new identity on autopilot. You're not forcing, you're marinating, and that's where the change happens, not in intensity, but in consistency. Step 6. Track emotional identity throughout the day. Your feelings are signals. They reveal which version of you is running the show. So, throughout the day, check in. Am I thinking from the old identity right now? Am I shrinking, doubting, playing small, or am I moving from the new assumption? Don't judge yourself, just notice. And when you catch yourself slipping back, gently return. One breath, one thought, one I am can bring you back into alignment. This is how you build emotional awareness and emotional authority. You stop reacting and start remembering. You start noticing. That's the old self speaking, but I don't live there anymore. And just like that, you shift timelines. Step 7. Navigate resistance, doubt, and ego pushback. Make no mistake, the old self will resist, not because it's evil, but because it's afraid. Change threatens its illusion of safety, so you'll hear whispers. This isn't working. You're not that person yet. Expect it. Don't argue with the ego. Don't fight it. Just say thank you for trying to protect me, but I choose something new, and return to the state. You may feel doubt, you may feel discomfort. That's not failure. That's evidence that the old identity is losing its grip. Keep going. Repetition is your weapon. Consistency is your breakthrough. The subconscious doesn't respond to intensity, it responds to familiarity. So the more often you embody the new self, even in small ways, the more natural it becomes, until one day you wake up, and the identity isn't something you're trying to assume. It's simply who you are, not because you forced it, but because you practiced it for 21 nights. That's all it takes to begin, to break the pattern, to build the bridge between who you've been and who you came here to be. Because when the subconscious accepts a new identity, the world bends to meet it. So you've begun. You've committed to the 21-night practice, you've chosen a new identity, you're falling asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and you're starting to walk through life from a different state of being. But now something unexpected happens. You start to feel worse. Old emotions rise to the surface. Random fears show up out of nowhere. Doubt creeps in, stronger than before. You start to question everything. This isn't failure. This isn't regression. This is emotional detox. When you impress a new identity onto your subconscious, the old one doesn't vanish instantly, it rises up, not to haunt you, but to be released. You've spent years, maybe decades, embodying a version of you rooted in survival, in fear, in limitation. And now that you've chosen something different, the old energy has to come up, to come out. So don't be surprised if you feel resistance, if your sleep gets restless, if your body aches, if memories surface you haven't thought about in years. That's the subconscious purging. That's your nervous system recalibrating. The feelings are not facts. They're just fragments, loose threads of the old self trying to hold on. Let them move through you, let them pass, and keep going. Because beneath the discomfort, something sacred is happening. You may start to notice other shifts, spiritual symptoms that tell you the internal work is starting to reflect externally. You may begin having vivid dreams where you meet a different version of yourself, or receive guidance, or face symbolic fears. You may start seeing synchronicities, repeating numbers, overheard phrases, unexpected signs that reflect the very identity you've been assuming. You might walk into a room and feel like your energy doesn't belong anymore, not because something's wrong, but because something's changed. This is what it looks like when your external reality starts to reorganize. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's dramatic. You might find that people begin treating you differently, either with more respect or with sudden distance. This too is a reflection of your new state. Some relationships will deepen as you rise, others may fade. Don't panic. Don't force. When you shift identity, you shift vibration. And when your frequency changes, your world must either rise to meet you or fall away. Let it. Let the friends, habits, and circumstances that no longer serve the new you dissolve with grace. Because something better is replacing them, something that resonates with who you're becoming. But here's the part where most people give up. Around day 10 or day 15, the urge to go back creeps in. You miss the comfort of the old identity. You get impatient. You say, why isn't it here yet? Why don't I feel different yet? And the subconscious tempts you. Just stop. Go back. This is pointless. But this is exactly where the breakthrough lives, on the other side of the identity threshold. Think of it like a cocoon. The caterpillar dissolves. It turns to mush. It doesn't know what it's becoming, only that it's not what it used to be. That's you, in the middle of this process. You're not who you were, but you're not fully who you're becoming, yet. So don't crawl out. Don't interrupt the metamorphosis. Because transformation is quiet before it's obvious, invisible before it's undeniable. If you quit now, you rewire in the belief that change doesn't work for me, and that becomes the new loop. But if you stay the course, if you keep showing up, even when it feels boring, even when you feel like nothing's happening, the shift takes root, and soon everything changes, until identity does. So during these 21 days, expect discomfort, expect emotional waves, expect old triggers and new questions, but also expect magic, expect glimpses of the real you, expect sudden moments of clarity, power, and presence. Expect your soul to start speaking louder than your fear, and most of all, expect to meet yourself, the you that was always underneath the programming, the you that was never broken, never lost, never small, is waiting for permission to emerge. Here's where most people stumble. They do the work, they shift the identity, they feel the change begin, and then they look outside and say, where is it? They check their bank account, they check their inbox, they check the mirror, and when they don't see immediate results, they say, maybe this isn't working. But here's the truth you must understand. Watching the pot slows the boil. Every time you seek evidence too early, you're telling your subconscious, I don't really believe this yet. You're trying to harvest before the roots have taken hold. And that doubt, subtle as it may seem, begins to sabotage the entire process. Because manifestation is not about checking for change, it's about becoming the change, with or without proof. Neville was crystal clear on this. A change of feeling is a change of destiny, not a change of circumstances. A change of feeling. So if you shift your inner state, but immediately scan your outer world to see if it agrees, you're pulling the seed out of the soil before it can bloom. That's the trap of evidence seeking. It looks logical, but it's rooted in fear, in lack, in the old identity whispering, see, I told you nothing changes for you. But here is the spiritual paradox. The faster you detach from needing it to happen, the faster it shows up. Why? Because detachment is faith. And faith is power. Faith says, I don't need to see it to know it's done. I don't need proof to feel the truth. I am already living in the end. And that state, that calm, deep-rooted conviction is magnetic. Become. It says, I already am. And the universe listens to that. You may have heard the scripture, be still and know that I am God. That isn't about inaction. It's about inner stillness. A quiet confidence, an unshakable knowing that what you assume, you become. That what you are inside must reflect outside, eventually. So let go of the timeline. Let go of the impulse to monitor, measure, or manipulate the outcome. That's not your job. Your job is to stay in state, to remain loyal to your new identity, not because it's proven itself, but because you've chosen it. Because you trust the law, and when you trust, you no longer change. You no longer ask, where is it? You walk with the knowing, it's already done. And in that space of surrender, the manifestation rushes in, not because you're desperate for it, but because you've become equal to it. You're no longer separate from the desire. You are the desire, made real. So stop searching for evidence. Start living in the energy, and the rest will take care of itself. Sometimes the most powerful proof isn't found in theory, but in the lives of those who've walked through transformation. Real people, real shifts, real miracles, all ignited by a single decision to assume a new identity. Let me share with you what happens when someone decides, this is who I am now, and refuses to go back. There was a woman named Mia. For most of her adult life, she struggled with money. No matter how hard she worked, the bills kept piling up. Every promotion seemed just out of reach, and deep down she held a quiet belief that she just wasn't the kind of person who got ahead. But after reading Neville's teachings, something clicked. She realized she had spent years saying, "I am just surviving. I am not good with money. I always get by but barely." She didn't need new skills. She needed a new story. So she crafted a new identity, one rooted in sufficiency, in ease, in abundance. Every night for 21 days she repeated, "I am wealthy. I am magnetic to prosperity. I am a powerful steward of money." At first, she felt like a fraud. Her bank balance said otherwise. But she stayed the course. She visualized herself checking her account and seeing overflow. She imagined the feeling of paying her bills with joy, of receiving unexpected deposits, of walking through the world without fear. She fell asleep in that feeling every night. And something shifted. Within 3 weeks, she was offered freelance work from a contact she hadn't heard from in years. Then came a surprise tax refund. Then a referral that turned into her largest contract yet. She didn't chase it. She became it. That's the power of identity. Then there was Jordan, diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune condition at 28. The doctors told him it would only get worse. And for a while, it did. Every symptom became a confirmation of his identity. I am sick. I am broken. I am at war with my body. Until one night, after listening to Neville, he asked a different question. What if I stopped fighting this and started assuming wholeness? He began with the smallest shift, whispering to himself before bed, I am healing. I am whole. I am vibrant. He imagined walking on the beach without pain. He visualized laughing with friends, energized and free. Even when his symptoms persisted, he returned to the state not as denial, but as direction. He stopped identifying as a patient. He became a person who lives in harmony with his body, and slowly his body responded. The flare-ups reduced. His sleep deepened. He found a doctor who introduced a new treatment protocol that actually worked. Not a cure, but a complete remission of symptoms. He didn't just get better, he became someone new. And then there's Elise. Years of heartbreak had convinced her she was unlovable. She said it in subtle ways. I'm too intense. People always leave. Maybe I'm just meant to be alone. Her outer life was a mirror of that belief. Partners who disappeared, relationships that never deepened, and a loneliness that clung like a shadow. But one night, she wrote a different script. She chose the identity of someone who is deeply chosen, deeply safe, deeply adored. She started speaking to herself with kindness. She imagined the feeling of being loved, not just by another person, but by life itself. She wrote letters from her future partner and read them before sleep. She fell asleep whispering, I am love. I am worthy. I am no longer waiting. 2 months later, she met someone in the most ordinary way, at a bookstore she almost didn't walk into. A quiet conversation turned into coffee, and the relationship bloomed with a kind of safety she'd never known. But here's what's important. She didn't manifest the partner first. She manifested the version of herself who could receive that kind of love, and from there the world responded. You see, these stories aren't about luck. They're not anomalies. They're demonstrations of the law of assumption in action. You don't change your life by chasing things. You change your life by changing who you assume you are. And then you let the mirror reflect the shift. Because the outer world is just a canvas, and identity is the brush. You paint it, night after night, feeling after feeling, and soon you look around and realize the world didn't just change, you did.